Can you hear me? We're live. Hi, welcome. My name is Robert Marcus. I'll be moderating this session. I'm the CEO of an AI fintech company by the name of Alpha 10X, involved in private markets investment, private equity, venture capital, etc., and investing in companies represented by the speakers here. That's a quick intro from me. So, quick intros, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah, of course. I guess this works. Great to be here. I'm Deniz. I'm the founder of two companies, one in retail and AI, and the other is in the advertising space. I guess that's the topic for today. I'm an entrepreneur for about 10 years. Keep investing in AI with my soul and everything. So here we go.
Thank you. My name is Charlie Cadbury. I'm the CEO of a company called Say It Now. I've had a career helping commercialize emergent technology. I sold my first website in '99, set up a software business in 2005, building websites, Facebook applications, and mobile applications since 2008. And ever since 2015, been exclusively working in the world of voice and voice agents. And Say It Now, our technology, we run the voice agents across Alexa for companies like Coca-Cola, like American Express, Subway, Starbucks, and many other Fortune 500 businesses.
Awesome. My name is Austin Reese. I'm from the US. I am the founder and president of a company called Bump Social media app to compete against TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. But we have a lot of blockchain and AI integrations and a lot of changes in how the monetization works for creators and users and brands. Here, first time in Saudi Arabia. Love it so far, love the people, very nice. Here to help support the Saudi 2030 vision.
Great, so let's dive right in. I love the title of this session, the attention economy. I think we do have an economy around attention today in a way that we don't really think about. I have 3 teenage boys, and I can tell you that they are managed by the attention economy. It's pretty extraordinary. The control that is inherent in the attention economy is exceptional. I was reading this morning about the rule of 7. Anyone know what the rule of 7 is? Anyone? In marketing, advertising, the original idea was you needed 7 to 13 impressions to get someone's attention. 7 to 13. Can you imagine how many thousands of impressions we get on any given ad in our current economy, in the virtual economy? So maybe starting with Denise, I think the big topic, the big underlying issue over here relates to ethics and how, if at all, big tech, small tech, startups, anyone working in this economy can conform to any ethics that give balance to our kids, give balance to our society, fairness. Over to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what defines ethic in advertising is, I think the main topic is about the battle between personalization and privacy, not just for the consumers, but there's also this brand perspective. I think AI is based on data, and we need to play with data in order to get results. And when it comes to advertising, it's all about targeting and getting the results. And engagement and everything that you just mentioned, it's directly correlated to the sales, and everything is just like all the engagements, all the clicks has to convert to sales. So from that perspective, I think there is lots of debates around how to protect the consumer privacy, how to give them more control and transparency over the data. But then from our perspective, we work with brands like Samsung and Bosch, and from their standpoint, they are kind of afraid to feed AI with their own data. Of course, there's many concerns when it comes to enterprise privacy as well, because whatever they share with AI can be utilized by their competitors as well. And there's some confidential information that, like, what if they haven't launched something yet and there's no information online, so they are starting something new, so would they be comfortable sharing their data with AI? So that's just one concern. The other concern is, of course, there's this copyright issue, so no brand would like to utilize some other brand's data, of course, like no logo, no nothing. So we need to make sure that there are certain boundaries that keeps them protected and just keeps their data in their control so they can just delete it anytime. I know this is not the subject. I mean, we are focusing more on the consumer side of things, of course, but there's also some precautions that we need to apply on the branding side. So that's my perspective. Just over to you.
So ethics is obviously an enormous nebulous subject, and I think that the problem can be is that AI is going to make, especially in the world of advertising, far, far, far more effective. And I think even one of our key patents is the ability to programmatically create a conversation which is compelling to an individual, so that if you're running kind of TV, audio campaigns, you can work out exactly what somebody needs to hear in order for them to then engage and take advantage of that offer. And should you do that? How far can that go, and how good are we going to get to do that? But I think specifically in the world of voice and voice response, the way that we approach that is it's very permissive. So nothing starts unless the consumer engages and says, then starts that conversation. Once they start that conversation, it can be a hugely beautiful branded conversation, and that can kind of go down a very compelling route. But I think that as long as you give control to the consumer and they're able to start, and once this whole lived experience of a conversation is very much in the human domain, and we've always had control of that, so it gives agency back to the consumer, and that's a good place to put an ethical consideration.
I agree.
For me, it's very unique and a very kind of a niche and specific area. So, one, ethics varies by region, by country, by culture. So, different cultures, different regions are going to have different ethical codes and norms that they're by. So, I think that's one matter from an AI perspective, and integrating that into any sort of social platform that really needs to be discussed. The other thing I think that is really important for at least Bump Social, we're really pushing community. So right now, if you're on TikTok or YouTube, the only way you are connecting to a creator or an influencer or a brand is going to be through a sponsored post, an ad. A creator is going to be through a comment in a video. So you don't know if, one, the creator actually took the time to read it, or if they're going to respond. So for us, we have communities where you can get in and you can engage with your favorite creators, with your favorite influencers, with your favorite brands. All of our algorithms are open source, so we share all of that with the users. We ask the users permission on what data they want to share with creators. So for example, if I'm following you on YouTube and I have in my settings and permission, you get my phone number, email, demographic info, and the interests that I like. Now, that seems really crazy and really confusing at first, because you'd say, wow, why would a user want to give that up? In our studies and what we've seen is that users want to get closer to the brands that they like. They want to get closer to the communities and to the creators they like. So really kind of having that open transparency within ethics, I think, is a really big piece of it. But then really also understanding the cultural norms and the differences going from region and different areas around the world.
Well, the thought that occurs to me is that what over time happens when big tech has a deeper and more profound understanding of who we are exactly. And this is going to increase exponentially over time. You have a much more precise understanding of me, and as a result, you're targeting me with more and more information, content, advertising. Is there any, maybe Charlie to you, does big tech have any kind of responsibility to curtail that? Or is, in this case, I mean, typically in the history of the human race is that we will deploy these emerging technologies as far as possible, monetize them as far as possible, until regulated not to do so. Is there any pre-regulatory control that big tech should deploy to kind of balance the equation? Or is it an open...
Well, I think this comes back to consumer acceptance. I think that you need to be able to build regulation into the design process to understand what the norms are that we're willing to accept. I think one of the great kind of proven examples for voice technology is to combat the epidemic of loneliness. There's a lot of people who want some companionship, and they can see that if they can have a conversation every day, it can stunt the development of kind of brain deterioration. And that can be really, really good, and people can actually get really, really compelling conversations back and forward with a virtual agent. But if that gets too good, then people will want to speak to their virtual agents more than other humans, and that will only encourage and perpetuate the epidemic of loneliness, right? And so we need to work out exactly what future we're trying to strive towards, trying to imagine that, describe it, and make sure that the incentives and the regulation is in place so that we reach the future that we want to get to. It's a real balance at the moment, trying to imagine what can happen. At the moment, most of the incentives are kind of capitalist incentives, and how do we make the best money off this? And that's not the only outcome we should be driving towards.
Yeah, I hear you. Denise, do you think that big tech could one day be viewed in the same context as big tobacco, having deployed a known addictive substance to the max?
Well, that's an ethical issue to create that addiction. It's all about, personalization, and everything that we're speaking here is all about how to create that addiction. But the truth is, the consumers are not stupid. I mean, once they see, like you were saying, the rule of 7, I think at some point we all feel a little frustrated seeing the same thing over and over again. It doesn't really positively affect us to just take the desired action. So I think the good thing for consumers, and also the responsibility for the big tech, I would say, is to create that balance in a way that it's not going to just promote a certain thing to create some kind of monopolization and the polarization for certain things, especially for the news and political, but not just going to go there. To have that balance for the psychological effect of the desired outcome for the advertising. So I believe the algorithms that they're creating today has to be a little diversified, I would say. So in my head, I was just discussing this with my partner the other day. I think while they are focusing on narrowing down user posts or topics, let's say, I think they should also reward if they explore diverse topics or other topics. I think algorithms should just change direction a bit to make sure that you're seeing some things, out of your scope, out of your, you're discovering new things, you're exploring new topics and all. So that I think it's their responsibility because that also affects the shopping behavior. If I see many things, if I can sense that there is some level of objectivity in the platform, I would personally tend to purchase more. So I think that balance is connected with everything. Eventually, that's going to affect the advertising outcomes positively.
I agreed. Austin, I think, I've personally been involved in AI for over 30 years. Originally identified the technology that is back of Siri, open agent architecture, in the late 90s, and acquired the rights to it, and I figured I'd be a billionaire by the year 2000. Good idea, but completely wrong on timing. It's taken decades to get to where we are now with AI that is now completely mainstreamed. Pretty much everyone has an understanding via GPT of the basic fundamental idea of AI. Austin, in the deployment of these algorithms that have become incrementally more complex and sophisticated over the last 30 years, how do you, in your company, deploy these algorithms in a responsible way? Is it even possible to do so?
I think having it be open source really helps, right? You're providing a transparency to all the consumers, users, brands, governments, any entity that's on the platform gets some sort of view into how it works, right? TikTok does not share their algorithm. YouTube does not share their algorithm. Now they use that as IP, right? And that's worth something, right? TikTok without its algorithm is not really worth much. That's kind of what they've perfected. But I think especially as you start utilizing AI to integrate into these algorithms and really fine tune and get very specific on what a user's watching, and then trying to anticipate what they're going to want to see and what they're wanting to view, you're starting to see that within TikTok specifically. And going controversial here, you're starting to see that within wars that are happening across the world. You're starting to see that prime example right now with the U.S. election, based off of a video that maybe you are watching in the U.S. that, let's say, relates to ATVs. Everyone's familiar with ATVs, side-by-sides, that are just roaming around. So in the US, that is typically a consumer product purchased by Republicans. So your AI models are going to start showing certain videos, certain political videos, based off of something else that technically has no relation to what they're doing, in that given moment. So, I think without really being open source and having a full transparency, I find it really hard to see where you're going to evolve into a place where Google is going to openly come out and say, here's our YouTube algorithm, and TikTok is going to openly come out and say, here's our YouTube algorithm, because the reality is that whether they deny it or not, right? China uses TikTok to place influence across the world. US obviously uses Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube to place influence across the world. Bump Social, we're going through our own raise, looking at the Public Investment Fund, talking about how we can help Saudi Arabia have influence throughout the world. So, it's all about how you can ethically push that and make that public and use that to say, hey, we're trying to do it for the betterment of humanity, for the betterment of people, to help people connect and grow.
I think one of the things that most people do not recognize or understand is that AI is embedded in so many different technologies. We have voice, Charlie, we have computer vision, we have all media are embedded now with algos at one level or another. I think people don't really appreciate that using a voice alone, you can analyze sentiment, using computer vision, a camera, even more so. So given that you're particularly in the voice space, where do you feel that industry is going in terms of how advertisers and marketers will use voice to better understand exactly what the consumer wants and then grow on that initial understanding over time, expand on that, become more precise?
So I think everyone's understanding that there's a rise of AI and it's being applied to existing interfaces and existing systems, but we need this kind of paradigm shift. And what every brand wants, you're going to speak to kind of brand managers the world over, they go, I want to generate a conversation with my consumers, right? And they do that by using TikTok and using social channels, and it's not really a conversation, it's trying to get people to click, swipe, change their mind or buy. But with voice, it's undeniable that the best way to build any trusted relationship is by using your voice and having a conversation, because it affects your minds in a different way. You're playing into this lived experience. So these brands that we're working with, they are beginning that journey to create the sound of their brands, the conversational agent that will then represent their brand, their best brand ambassador that then sits within these rising voice agents. Now the trick then is, once you've created, we work out, what it should sound like, how you want to kind of deliver all your kind of brand values and messages. But then how do you drive people to that? The way that we're seeing, great success at the moment is through audio channels, because, we follow around behavior. People, it's smart speakers, for example, 60% of UK homes have a smart speaker, 90 million US homes have a smart speaker, and people are rushing to talk to their technology. Every single major tech player has put their voice front and center of their assistants this year. And so we use TV and radio to inspire people to talk to their voice assistants. They get that conversation with that brand, but the brand then gets a whole lot of insight. Which of this media placement is working? What conversation is being had? So which kind of different branch of that conversation people are interested in? Are they interested in price-based offers, value-based offers, or do they just want to explore what that brand can deliver them? And at that point, they're having this conversation. They're playing a part in that person's day, that lived experience, and people are far more likely to have much more brand affinity. So it's a very, very, very exciting time. But what we see is the same opportunity now in voice that we saw in web in the year 2000. So in 2000, every brand on the planet started to play with, do I need to have some kind of web presence and a website? What we're seeing is that by 2030, every single brand will have to have some compelling conversational agent that sits within every single assistant that people have chosen to use, and that can then be updated and communicated forward by that brand. I'm very passionate about this.
I definitely buy that. I see the passion. Denise, I was thinking, the attention economy is both hyper-personal and it's collective. I was thinking about it last night as almost like a sea, an ocean that moves back and forth. However, in this case, we can control the flow and the tides of the ocean. there is this collective aspect to it that I don't think we pay enough attention to. And I see it in my kids, how they lock on to certain ideas that are collective in their age group. And they're very well controlled in that respect. So the question to you is, to what degree is that a good thing? Is it a good thing? Is there a certain almost mind control emerging? I mean, we're some years away from artificial general intelligence, but maybe not that far away. And even now, as we collect more and more data, more and more understanding of who Denise is, what you're interested in, we really understand you. And then we connect you collectively into a much larger ocean that we can control. And it may be a brand, it may be sneakers, maybe perfume, whatever it is, or it could be a political mindset. And the ability to move and shape becomes, in my mind, as a parent, terrifying. But what do you think?
Well, I'm relatively from a younger generation, so I just like grow with all these technologies and all the platform. In my home country, Turkey, we have like that Gen Z, I think, population almost forming around like 40% of the country. So from my experience, yes, the tech giants will always push for like, you know, increasing that addiction, creating more addiction. It's how the algorithms are working towards. But I think the new or fresh, let's say, approach that maybe like this country can take is about also positioning the consumers in a different way, because like AI is putting everyone in a very passive position. And right now, from the ethical perspective as well, it's creating this hesitance over people because they feel useless and they know at some point that their jobs will be replaced. So I think in order to like break that dilemma, I think we need to break that wall between like the tech giants and the consumers, where they just tell us something and we take it as is. And at some point, of course, it will create a frustration for advertising, for news, for everything, because like we are being exposed to so many things, and at the end of the day, we all feel a little. Sometimes I just like close my phone, and like even here, I do have my phone right now as an extension of my body. So, and we are like working remotely, so we kind of have to bring it like for the business purposes as well. So there's no escape. So our stance here for the advertising purposes is to leverage the community as well and involve the consumers as much as possible. So I think that should be the stance. What I mean is, if I'm a brand that is using AI for advertising or for any purpose, I should be, if there's enough personalization for my brand, so I do have the trust to AI to protect my data or reflect my brand for voicing purposes, for assistance, for sales, for marketing, for anything, I should be able to open my brand to the consumers, and this is what we also do for the fashion brands as well. So they have their brand heritage, their design, their aesthetics, and for the advertising as well. So they are asking this question, like, how do we train AI in a way that we create a campaign, we publish the campaign, and the consumers can come and create advertisings with us using AI tools. So there is no skill requirements for designing purposes. Anyone, even if that person is not an influencer, I do have 200 followers in my Instagram. I'm working at advertising. Can I be an influencer? No. Should I be an influencer? No. But I should be given the flexibility to just engage with the brand in order to make money, or in order to just like engage with them in different ways. I think that is breaking the wall, and advertising is a great space to start that. I think we do have like those micro-influencers that are just generating those authentic contents that are generating something real. I think we need more of that. It's not about just like me as a brand just shouting out my message for eternal. That's not the way how this should work. Yeah, that's all.
I totally agree. Austin, you're American. A country that is not particularly pro-regulation
No.
in general. Other countries face things differently. Is it even possible to regulate? Is it desirable to regulate this emerging technology? Can it be done? And especially in the US context, is it even...
In the US?
Yeah.
I do not believe so, no. No. So to give you a perspective and a story, so one, I believe that regulation is absolutely going to be done by a country basis. I know there's plenty of efforts to have regulatory bodies that are global, but let me give you a quick story of reference here. So if you're familiar with video games, I'm sure everybody at some point has played a video game or had exposure to some. Are you familiar with Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto? Really interesting games with very interesting mechanisms of how to play, not the best ones to do. But they put a lot of addicting elements in these games. So in the US, a lot of lawsuits were formed to go after the gaming companies for putting addictive elements into games that young kids are playing, so they need to remove them. Went to the courts. The main thing that everybody on the video game side used as defense is the food industry. Now, I came from the food industry, so for anyone in the audience, do you know what one of the most 3 addictive substances are on Earth? No? Any guesses?
Sugar.
Sugar. There we go. So the US food system is filled with sugar in everything, whether it is bread, whether it is tea, coffee, alcohol, even green beans are filled with sugar. So the entire legal team of all of the gaming companies said, that's great. If you want to take the addictive elements out of video games, you need to go to all these other industries in the US and take any addictive element out of those to make it fair and an equal playing field. Well, within 2 weeks, the whole entire lawsuit was shut out. So, in the US, we have lobbying, which, you can come to your own definitions in terms of what lobbying is and if, what you would call that in other countries. But I think it's very hard from a regulatory standpoint. I think the US is it's capitalistic, right? Capitalism is at its core. So I do think it's a really big challenge. I think if there is any regulation, it's going to be very, very slow, very, very long to come, at least from the US standpoint. So, as a consumer, as a parent, myself, and to anyone else out there, I think, the big question you need to be asking is, based off of whatever company and entity it is, where is it, right? Where is it based? What are the local, regional conforming laws that are dictating, how that company can operate? And I think that's what you need to be asking yourself, at least in the near future, of, how am I going to go and utilize these different things? And if looking at AI and algorithms, we saw open AIs go pretty private pretty quick, and even people like Elon Musk investing tens of millions of dollars into AI systems that had this whole promise of being open source that now are very becoming closed, and that's part of a capitalistic country.
Yeah,
So.
agreed. We're about out of time over here. Would love to understand from the audience, if you think about the idea of the attention economy, everything we've been talking about for the last half an hour over here, how many of you think that the attention economy is a good thing? It's a good thing. One brave gentleman over here thinks 2.
So,
Everybody else thinks it's a bad thing, fundamentally. This is a small snapshot of the world. How is it even possible that the world is being led into the attention economy if this small cohort of people overwhelmingly believe it's a negative thing?
Good and bad.
Yes? Yeah.
All in how you use it and how you define it and how you are transparent with it.
Maybe 2 very quick questions, and then we'll wrap up if we have any questions in the audience for the panelists on any of the topics. Yes, sir.
Any fans of Jonathan Haidt and his new book, The Anxious Generation, where he psychologically astute worries about what we're doing to our children, especially as they're going through puberty? Maybe it's all right for us when we're a bit older because we've a bit more common sense, but children in particular, instead of going out and playing and getting rough and tumble without parental supervision, they're trying to get more likes on Instagram. And Jonathan Haidt highlights lots of connections to more girls committing suicide and boys harming themselves in other ways. Is this something that informs your insight? And he's not arguing for regulation, by the way. He's just arguing for schools to take decisions collectively, because one child can't leave their smartphone behind if all their buddies have got them. So it needs to be a collective thing.
This is super hot in my household right now. I have twin 10-year-old boys and a 9-year-old daughter, right? And so within all the groups, you know, the mobile phones are banned at school until the secondary school, until all the kids are 12, and they're banned very much in our household. It's an open discussion about how we manage dumb phones, is what is the current proposition for the next few years of their life. But as you say, you know, peer pressure is out there, and the kids are going to be traveling further and further. As a safety issue, I live in London, and so, you know, we need to make sure that they can communicate. So, you know, it's a multifaceted challenge. I would love to read the book, but yeah, no, this is a really hot topic. But I think there is a growing, you know, a growing body of evidence and swell within the population that, you know, this should be stopped. You know, with the time in our lives when our brains are growing the fastest and we're building the foundation for the rest of our lives, we want to build a generation which has the mental capacity to deal with the world that's coming at them, and that's not necessarily by spending your life within your phone.
And so I think there's two things to really dive into your question, but the first one is the algorithms themselves. So social media is designed to operate off of dopamine, in particular negative dopamine. So the goal of TikTok and YouTube and Facebook is to get you to just doom scroll until your brain just gets fried enough to where you quit, but you're not actually fulfilled. So one unique thing with Bump Social is we're trying to push positive dopamine through communities, and then we want to get you off of our app. So we only want you on our app for about an hour to 2 hours a day. During those hours to 2 hours a day, I know you're shaking your head, 2 hours a day of doom scrolling. We don't want you to doom scroll. We want you to engage in a community. And by doing that, you're not focusing on how many likes am I getting, you're going on authentic connections. The second piece is, you know, going back to, in terms of kids, the reality is that technology is going to progress. And I can tell you that I have seen kids that have not been able to use phones and not been able to be on their Xboxes and PS4s until they're, you know, 10 years old, 12 years old. I can tell you that those kids have a much harder time socializing with the other kids in school. Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, a lot of that is because your other kids are exposed to this technology and, you know, what they're doing. So I really think a big key in that, and to your point, really a lot of active parenting and explaining you know, to kids and really helping them understand, one, the dangers, you know, of kind of looking and saying stuff. And because everyone's looking at your highlight reel, right? Like Instagram. You know, the reality is if you have 1 million followers on TikTok or YouTube, the average influencer only gets paid 50 grand a year in US dollars. And that's not a whole lot of money. But I can tell you on social media, all the kids are looking at it and say, oh my gosh, that YouTuber is making millions of dollars a year. So, you know, that education is a huge and big component, but, you know, going back again, it's all about being open with your algorithms, with what you're trying to do, you know, how you're trying to push things. But really pushing social media to get away from a negative dopamine, I think, is a really critical step.
Denise, last word from you.
I mean, I don't have really like children. I think I'm at that stage. I have been exposed to all these like things that we just mentioned throughout the session. From the creator, I mean, there's this publishing platforms who needs to take precautions, I guess, like their algorithms just define what we are creating eventually, because like we are just on the software development side, the tech giants will decide, and obviously the policymakers will just like shape everything. I think they're taking some sort of precautions in terms of like there's no discrimination, there's certain rules if you're advertising in the Europe zone, for example, for certain things, like you cannot choose genders or certain like age gaps, so that's like prohibited. I do believe from the consumer standpoint, the younger generation should be exposed, because it's something that we cannot escape, with all honesty. But as I was saying, I think if they can learn to use it as a leverage to just collaborate with each other and learn from each other, I think that's the way to go. So I think that the thing to do here is to really change the positioning between like brands and tech giants and the consumers, and just like make them engage with each other and make them like involved as much as possible, even though that sounds like a bit of work from where we stand today. But I think, yeah, that's the way to go. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the panel. Thank you very much, and thank you to the audience. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.